Hi friend, it's your host Emily Matheson and welcome to New York Transplants, the podcast. On this podcast, I connect with other transplants to better understand how can we find human connection and build community in this concrete jungle. As a mental health expert, I am always looking for new ideas and tools to support my sense of belonging and well-being. That's why I am leaning on my guests and asking for their advice on how I and you can nurture our New York roots. So what are you waiting for? Come and get rooted with us. Can you remember in episode 1 where I mentioned a kick-ass spin instructor who helped inspire this podcast? Well, do I have a treat for you? Today's guest is the one and only Angie Morrow. Angie is the lead instructor at Cycle Bar NoHo and has cultivated her New York community through this inclusive spin franchise. We talk about Angie's journey from being a 22-year-old doe-eyed Midwest girl who had no desire to move to the Big Apple to becoming so ingrained in New York that she plans on dying in her new apartment. The episode covers many transplant experiences, from home FOMO to putting pressure on yourself to make it work in a city full of possibilities. If you are a visual person, then I suggest you consume this episode via video, as there were plenty of double chin laughs and hype girl energy. Also, before we jump in, as I say at the beginning of this episode, I am a rookie podcaster and would love to hear from our listeners about what you enjoyed in this episode and what direction you'd like the podcast to take. But less of that, and without further ado, let's get rooted with Angie Morrow. Angie Morrow. Is that how I pronounce it?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
I just had to my Australian accent for a second.
Perfect, actually.
Welcome to New York Transplants, the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I feel like this has been a long time coming because firstly, I spoke about this idea with you probably a few months ago.
Right.
And then I recorded my first episode and spoke about you a few times and your kind of role in my transplant experience, but also kind of the inspiration for the podcast. So it's really funny because I didn't want to get into too much detail about that.
Yeah.
I wanted to save it for this episode. So welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Is this your first podcast appearance?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm popping your podcast cherry.
You are.
Oh, well, this is going to be fun because I am a rookie podcaster. So let's just see where it takes us.
Okay.
As I said, I held off giving too many details about you, but one thing I did say is that I feel like you have the energy of a professional cheerleader, but the wisdom of a 50-year-old therapist.
Oh my gosh.
Is that an accurate description?
That is so kind. I kind of love that. Yeah. I kind of love it. Yeah.
We'll go with that.
That's great.
Have you always had an outgoing personality?
Yes. I'm the youngest of 3. So I feel like I definitely wanted my voice heard as a kid. And I was like, I'm going to have to be outgoing to compete with my brother and my sister. So I think naturally I was just like I'm going to be loud. I'll be enthusiastic.
It's always the way. Like, did you have very few photos taken of you as the youngest?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Non-existent.
Yeah. And that's
photographically.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I'm like, you know what? Some of those years we didn't need to see anyway. That's so good.
So how many years difference is it?
So like my brother's 2 and then my sister's 2 above him. So I'm 4 from her. So it's like a nice, I feel like we grew up in there was like obviously a phase where we fought a little bit where like my sister would drive us to school and then and like me and my brother like be late to the car, like whatever it was. So we would fight. But like now that I feel like we're all in our adult 20s and 30s that we're like friends, which is fun.
That feels like an idealistic American movie.
Yeah.
Like the idea of like siblings going to the same high school, the oldest driving you to, to school.
Yes.
That's what I'm picturing right now.
Yes, exactly.
Is that your childhood?
Yeah. And we have like songs that we can like think of that we like would listen to in the car together. And like, it definitely was like, there was so many like good memories from it. Yeah.
Where are they back home?
So my brother lives like outside of like where my family's from. And then my sister lives in Wisconsin. So
Midwest. She's a Wisconsin transplant?
She's from Illinois. I grew up in Illinois. So yeah.
I'm still working on my US geography.
Oh, they're just right by each other.
They're neighbors.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've always been outgoing. How would you say that personality has served you here in New York? Good, bad, ugly?
I feel good.
Yeah.
For the most part. I definitely, when I first moved here, a lot of people made comments to me about they're like, you're so happy and you're so smiley. Like people would look at me with concern for my outgoingness. And I was like, is that a bad thing? And then I recognized and realized that you definitely don't get a lot of bubbly, I think maybe in New York. There's some definitely outgoing people here, but
confidence.
Yes. Oh my gosh. But maybe not necessarily as giggly or outgoing 100%. In that way. Yeah.
I noticed that I was the same. I would always get feedback on my, I have a resting smiley face as opposed to a resting bitch face. And people were shocked by that. I would smile on the subway and people just automatically knew I wasn't a New Yorker. And I was having a conversation with a bunch of Australians earlier today. And we were talking about how New Yorkers have this reputation for not being nice, but I would say they're kind people. They're not necessarily polite,
right? But
they're the kindest. It just takes a little of the, you need to buffer those interactions a little.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think New Yorkers are they just they're mean and they're rude and they're not, especially if you get to know them. But the thing that made me attracted to New York City was that New Yorkers have a goal.
Yes.
And they have something in mind. And if you're gonna get in their way, that's when they get mean and rude. If you're walking slow on the sidewalk, and I'm okay, I get it now. Having lived here for a while, I'm oh, I understand. They're not actually just mean to be mean.
No.
They're
on a mission.
They're on a mission.
Yeah.
And you get just if you're on a mission, someone gets in your way, you're not going to be happy about it.
No.
Yeah.
And I've noticed I've now become that way. I'm a stomper. I am a sidewalk stomper.
Yep.
And I've also had to learn what side to walk on because in Australia, we walk on the other side. So it took, so strange. We drive and walk on the other side on the road, but also on the sidewalk. And so I would have this whole first 6 months of navigating that and oh God, no, American brain.
Oh my gosh.
And so now I'm an American brain and I'm on American New York speed.
Right.
And I have to check myself sometimes.
Yeah. It's 10 times faster than anywhere else.
Yeah. So tell me, Illinois is home. What particular city, town in Illinois?
So I was born in a small town in Illinois and then I moved when I was 7 to another small town. And then I moved again when I was 17.
Okay.
To another small town. So home is technically Elburn, Illinois.
Yeah.
But I definitely it was all within 30 miles of each other, where I live. So I just always say small town Illinois.
And what made you move across those different times?
When I was 7, we moved. I think my family wanted to go to a different school district. And then when I was 17, my brother and sister had already gone to college.
Yep.
And my mom and dad kind of sat me down and we just wanted to downsize the house. And they were hey, we found some really great homes in this town, Elburn. They were but it's not in the same school district.
So what year were you in? Was that junior or senior?
I was going into junior year.
Oh.
So I actually had a pretty tough go around at my first high school. So I was go for it. Let's move.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was expecting the opposite.
Nope. I was let's move. Let's go. Let me try.
Yep.
And for the purpose of what we're talking about, I feel it definitely helped me even just going to college, the same idea. You go to college, you don't know anybody. I went to this high school and what's kind of wild is people knew of me because I was an athlete.
Of course.
And I had already committed to play at the University of Wisconsin. So
what sport?
Softball.
Yeah.
Nice. So I came over to this high school and I feel it was a weird movie of people were I know who you are.
Again, this this is an American movie.
Yeah, it was I know who you are. And I was I knew of one girl. She also played softball and thank God she took me under her wing and was my best friend. She was awesome. But it was my last 2 years of high school were like literally so incredible. I was so excited, so happy that we moved.
Yeah.
So, and it was kind of weird, like being the youngest. No one knew, like I wasn't like Abby's little sister. I wasn't Jake's little sister. I was just Angie.
A fresh start.
Yeah. No one knew who I was. So it was like definitely attractive to me that I was like, oh, there's like an opportunity to do this when I go to college. And then after college, I was like, oh, well, let me just
start your own story.
Yeah.
Have a clean slate and make it what you want to make it.
Exactly.
So where did you go to college?
University of Wisconsin.
Okay. And then what did you study?
I studied retail and consumer behavior.
Behavior, psychology.
Yes.
We link it. We like it.
Yeah.
So when did the idea of New York start to emerge? Like how long had New York been a dream for you?
So what's funny is it never necessarily was. I knew I wanted to live in a city.
Yes.
Like I loved going downtown Chicago. I traveled a lot, like playing softball growing up. So like I knew I wanted to live in a big city, but I had never been to New York. And I was applying for jobs and obviously studying retail. A lot of retailers are out here.
Of course.
So I was kind of like willy-nilly. I was like, oh, I'll just like try it. And then the company I actually still work for now reached out to me and they're like, hey, can you come out for an interview? And we will pay for like your flight and we'll pay for your hotel.
Amazing.
And I was like, at the end of the day, it's a free trip to New York City, even if I hate it there.
Yep.
And the trip, like the flight was like delayed like 4 hours. I didn't get in until like 3 a.m. I had to wake up at like 7 for the interview. And I'm thinking in my head and I'm like, I hate the city already.
Yeah, of course.
And I walked out to like walk to the building for the interview. And I was like, oh no. Oh no.
You got the
I'm
bug.
like, I love it. Yeah. Like it's palpable. Like the energy here is literally palpable. Yeah. And I was like, this is so crazy. Yeah. The interviews went well and they were so kind and like something I was really nervous of. I was like admitting to them I'd never been to New York because I'm like, why would they want to take a girl like that's never been here? She's gonna jump ship.
She's green.
And I was like, I'm like, I love it. Like I'm trying to figure out if I love it here. And they like gave me a whole itinerary for the weekend. So I like went to like the Brooklyn Bridge and the like 9/11 Memorial and like the High Line, Chelsea Market. Like I literally hit everything in 2 days.
You had nothing to do when you go back.
Yeah. I was like, and I was like, no. And I remember I emailed them immediately and I was like, I had the best weekend. I can see myself living here. Like, thank you so much for your time. Yep. Like, I hope I like get this offer. And then I remember thinking in my head and I'm like, what am I going to do if I don't get this offer? Yeah. I'm like, I want to move so bad. I want to go there so bad. And then ended up working out very nicely. But yeah.
And probably that's more of a sweeter way to enter because you don't have those like hopes too high coming into it. Yeah. So like as opposed to having a dream for 10 years and then everything hinging on this interview and then it's like, what if I don't get it? Right. So like to be able to be, again, clean slate, not knowing what you're coming into and then just, I mean, I haven't met too many people who haven't caught the buzz. Yeah. Like immediately of being in here, being in the city. There's, the downsides, the trip from JFK into the city. You wonder, like, why do I have to get severe car sickness for an hour just to get back? Right. And I know people are going to hate on me. There are subway, to get, but like not with a 50-kilo suitcase. Yeah. No, thank you.
No, I'm an Uber to the airport girl.
Yes, me too. Yeah. I don't do helicopter at least. Right. I do the regular car situation.
Same.
So did you know, so how old were you, when you moved?
I was 22. Yeah. 22? Yeah.
You're a bubba.
That's
22. Yeah. And did you know anyone when you again, because it wasn't really an idea of you coming out here. Did you have friends? Did you know you were 22 and
yep, I did. I
solo.
I knew nothing about New York. Like I knew nothing about New York City. I knew nothing about how to get an apartment in New York. I knew I learned a lot. Yeah. And let me tell you, I didn't know. I knew of like one girl from my first high school. She had moved here. And then I ended up like someone reached out to me from Wisconsin and him and I connected and we became friends. So that was literally it. Like I didn't know a single soul moving out here.
Was that terrifying? Like, did you think, like you say yes to the job, you're going, I'm moving, like what were some of the thoughts going through your mind around, was the idea of having to make friends even top of mind, or were you just thinking about logistics of getting settled in, starting a new job?
I think I wish it was more top of mind, but I was so excited about starting a career.
Yeah.
Like I have always craved like the idea, like I like corporate America. Like I like the 9 to 5, and I always crave that idea of like the structure of it all. So I was so excited about the job.
Yes.
That I don't think I like necessarily put together the pieces that like you're moving 900 miles away and you don't have a single friend there. Yeah. And like it hits you.
Yes.
And you're like, oh,
yeah,
perfect.
How long into it did it hit you?
I feel like it was really early. Like I really feel like it was like weekend 2.
Yeah.
Because like weekend 1, I was like, oh, I can like, do what I want to do because I'm alone. Yeah. And then the second weekend I was like, well, people at work were like talking about having plans and like doing things. And I'm like, oh, I don't have anybody to like ask to really make plans with right now. Yeah. Like I'm like, I actually don't know what to do. Yeah. So it hit me pretty early on, but I became like so independent and like I can do my own thing all the time. Yeah.
Did you find that daunting? Because one thing that I've gotten, I've been here 2.5 years and I've pendulum swing from like being busy to then, and not even thinking about like, and my like community is definitely growing. And I'm still am defining what community means to me.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that I've noticed when I do things on my own, people put so much emphasis on it as it being this courageous, brave thing. I went to an Italian cooking class the other week on my own.
Fun.
It was so good. I'll give you the details.
Yeah.
But it was all couples. And I was there and these people were like, where's your husband? Where's your partner? And I was like, he's away this weekend. No. And if I waited for him, like he's busy with work and comedy. I was like, if I waited for him to be home every weekend, I wouldn't do anything.
Right.
But it's really funny how people put a lot of emphasis on doing things. Like it needs to be normalized that people can do things alone and there's comfort and strength in that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like starting to get that way in New York. Yeah. That like people are, like people celebrate doing things alone. And I love that. But yeah, I couldn't agree more that there's definitely been times where I've shown up to something and people are like, oh, where are your friends? Yeah. Or where's your boyfriend? Or I'm like, well,
yes,
I'm here alone.
Yeah.
and I'm happy about it.
That assumption that like, oh, there's someone missing or someone coming with you. And it's like, no, independent, strong, can do it.
We're good. Yeah.
So in terms of, I guess, moving interstate or overseas, was that common in your hometown? Like, did people do that a lot, or is it quite a like monumental thing for you to do it?
So growing up playing softball, luckily I had was kind of surrounded with, I was younger in like my team that I played for. So I had some older girls go off to at least college. Like I had a few girlfriends go to like Tennessee, one go to Kentucky, one went to like Georgia. So like that was nice that was like a little bit of a foundation, although like it wasn't my like family and they were only going for college. Yeah. But it was definitely like, I think everyone was like, you're going where? You're moving where? You're Chicago's right here. Like that was the other thing I got all the time. They were like, Chicago's right here. You want to move to a big city? Chicago's, it's right there. And I was like, yeah, it's different.
Yeah. Yeah. I really want to go to Chicago. I
haven't. Gosh, it's beautiful.
And it's funny because I think it gets compared to New York a lot. Like people will call it like the little New York. Yeah. But
it makes me mad. I don't think they're the same at all. Like I really don't. I think some people like to just say that about like large cities. Like Chicago, you have to have a car. It's really spread out.
Yes.
Chicago is spotless. It's stunning. Because they have alleys, so they can throw their garbage in the alleys. And then also like having the river and like Lake Michigan, right? It's literally, it's gorgeous. But it's very different. It's a very different vibe. Like I feel like we have our neighborhoods here, but the neighborhoods there are like a little bit more rigid.
Yeah.
I feel like they're like pretty defined. Like you can kind of like creep into West Village, Chelsea, and like you're like, I'm in the same place. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit more rigid there.
It's really funny that you talk about, just the trash and the cleanliness, because I've never thought about where my taxes go. That feels like a real adult thing.
Right.
And now I'm like, where are my taxes going? Why can't we clean up the rubbish? There has to be a better way.
There has to
and
be a better way.
I don't know the logistics.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're doing their best.
Right.
But I've never thought about my taxes ever. And now I think about it in terms of they've got to be going somewhere better than this.
So relatable.
So that's adulting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It is. Yeah. It's scary.
So you moved. One thing I alluded to in episode 1 was that during your 1000th ride, you spoke about originally moving to New York, then needing to move back because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like everyone has a COVID related story.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that transition back home and what that did to you psychologically, emotionally, and how you mustered the energy to give it a second try.
I think it definitely, it's so interesting because I do feel like it helped me in a way to like get back here and to like do what I'm doing now and how I'm doing now.
Interesting.
So I had just started training at a spin studio.
Yep.
Literally right the moment that like COVID hit. So I was just dipping my toe into like creating friends. Like 6 months in, I'm like I kind of have some coworker friends. Like I've made some friends through like Wisconsin stuff, and I'm like, okay. And then I have this like little teeny tiny community of like 3 or 4 of us that are training together. And then it's like, just kidding, everybody, like go home. So that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Cause I was like, oh, I was so close. Like I feel like I'm so close. Yeah. So got home, and then like I have to say, like it was just me, my mom, and my dad for a little bit, and like I will never get that time. Like we played card games, and we like cooked crazy dinners, and we drank a lot of wine. Like I would never ever like turn back time for that. It was incredible. And then crazy, we're approaching when my lease is about to end in New York, because I obviously had to pay for my rent, and my company is still fully remote, and things in New York still aren't opening. And I'm like, even if it was August, so I'm like, even if I go back in January and I put my stuff in storage, I'm saving a decent amount of money. Yeah. So I make the choice. I'm like, gonna put my stuff in storage, because I knew, I was like, I'm always gonna go back. And people always ask me, they're like, what if you like want to move home? I'm like, well, I'll just get my stuff in storage and move home if that happens. But put my stuff in storage, and things in Illinois were kind of opening up a little bit. So my mom and dad were also like a bit like, I think they would never admit this, but like probably like a little sick of me. They were like maybe can you like get out of the house? I was kind of like, I started to get like a little sad girl, because I was like, I'm moving. I'm like, and they were like, could you just, and I was like, okay. So I type in spin studio near me, and there's one 50 minutes away. So I look at my mom and I'm like, can I borrow your car? And she was like, go for it. Take the car. Take the car, go.
That is 2 hours on the road, hour there, hour back.
And I hate driving. Fun fact.
Really? I hate That's why you love New York and maybe not Chicago.
Love New York.
I get it.
So I emailed the like lead instructor at the time at that studio, and I'm like, hey, so I like don't technically have experience, but I did train for the past 8 weeks with another spin studio. I grew up at Cycle Bar. Yeah. So I went to Cycle Bar in college. Like, I'm like, I know the brand. I love the brand. Yes. I'm coming to class tonight. And she was like, awesome. So I go and take class, and she is riding with me. Like, she didn't actually teach the class. And afterwards she looks at me and she was like, what are the odds you go to audition tonight?
Stop.
And I was like, yeah, sure. Okay. Sounds good. What do you need me to do? I'm like, what's the guidelines? We do the audition, turn it in. Everything has to like go through corporate. She gets a boot camp for the next weekend, and I am trained a Cycle Bar instructor within like literally 3 weeks.
What does an audition for a spin studio entail?
It's for back in the day. It's a lot different now, but it was just I had to teach 2 songs. Yeah. They gave me like guidelines on like what the RPMs were and stuff.
Were like I kind of, because there's such a performative element of it. And I think it's one of those things like anything, the easier it looks, like it's such a skill set to make it look easy. Mm-hmm. And like you even breathe through things very effortlessly in the sense of like making your riders feel comfortable and allowing for flaws, because that's the beautiful part, I think, definitely of your classes and Cycle Bar is the ethos around like body functionality, focusing on what your body can do and experience, as opposed to like staring at yourself in the mirror and punishing yourself. That's the body image researcher in me coming out, sorry. But it's, I can imagine that would be really daunting for someone to be like, the day of, you're going to get on a bike. Here's some, like, did you choose your songs?
Yes. Yeah. So back in the day, I actually auditioned for Cycle Bar in college and it went awfully. I actually didn't even, it's so funny. I knew everything about it already.
Yes.
Because I studied so hard for that first audition and I didn't even make it for my 30 seconds. She stopped me. She was like, this is not going to happen.
Did she give you feedback?
Yes. Yeah.
What was the feedback?
Oh, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just so excited to be there. And an instructor at the time was like, Angie, you should try this. And I was like, okay. And I had no idea. She was like, so here's how to cue. I had no idea what I was doing. Nothing. So I'm like, oh, okay. I kind of know the guidelines of this. And the lead instructor at that studio, she was like the most warm, welcoming woman. Like she was awesome. So she's like, we can do it as many times as you want. She's like, but you're going to crush it.
Beautiful.
And first one, I was like, is that good enough? And she was like, it's perfect. So it was literally a happenstance. It was so crazy. And it was kind of nice. I didn't have like time to think about it.
Yes.
I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing. Like I was supposed to teach a full class 6 months ago.
And that's so
like,
true.
I'm like, I got this. Like, I'm sure it's the different brands and whatever, but I'm like, it's okay. So yeah. And then I taught my first class. I will have been with the brand. It'll be 4 years in September. That was like my first class 4 years ago in 2020. And then a month later, the same lead instructor pulls me aside and she was like, hey, I'm going to step down as the lead and you're going to take it over. And I was like, I got here 4 weeks ago. Every other person on this team has been here longer than me.
Damn.
I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you saying? And she was like, you love this more than anyone I've ever seen. She's like, you care. And I was like, but
she does.
I was like, I'm like, I don't, what? Like, I'm 23. So I'm like, you're kidding me. I'm like, I'm a child. There's instructors there that are 32, 33, 35. I'm like, I shouldn't be the lead of the studio.
Were any of them expecting, how did that kind of dynamic work for you in terms of, was anyone expecting them to be the next natural choice?
There was like 1 or 2 that I think maybe were just like a little taken back, that they were like, this brand new girl's going to do it. And I did my best to I'm going to show you, I truly do. And like, I literally dove myself into Cycle Bar. Like I knew the format backwards and forwards. I was at that studio, like working from home at that point in time, which like my employer hopefully isn't listening. Like I literally like worked from the car because it was an hour away. Like I worked from the studio. Like I was always there and people were like, where do you live? I'm like, you don't even know the name of the town. That's how far I live. Like it's crazy. So I ended up like making friends with the instructors and staying at their apartments. And like, it was like one of the most, like at that point in time, I like looked at that lead and I was like, also, I was so sad because I was like, she was such a mentor to me. Yeah. And I was so excited to learn from her. And then when she was like, I'm leaving, I'm like, what are we doing? And then it ended up being like one of the best things to happen to me.
Would you say she has influenced your mentor style? Like in terms of particularly NoHo, like you're the lead instructor there, you mentor new instructors, junior instructors. I mean, you mentor, riders. Have you taken parts of her style and taken that on?
Oh, 100%. Like, I truly wish I had more time with her because she was just like someone that walked into a room and like people like turned their heads and they were like, who is that? And like the way that she commanded a room, I like remember being like, I just like want to be able to command a room like that. Like for people to just look at me and I say add a quarter turn and everyone does it. Like just because they're like entranced. And like she was so incredible that I was like, okay, like this is, I have someone to like look up to. So it was so sad to me when she was like, I'm
and
leaving.
not out of fear. I think that that's another thing. You lead with heart, not with punishment or fear. And that's so important in movement spaces and within communities because people trust you and they are motivated by that. And I think that's been a real shift in the movement and particularly the spin space because, you know, previously I think when people think of spin classes, it's like strap yourself to a bike and just pedal. Right. And you just like picture someone with like the headband and like just sweating and like, you know, being whipped. Whereas that is when I tell people like spin is my therapy, I am in therapy, but I do therapy. Like that feels like a therapy session because you just go, it's both a solo as well as a like collective effort. Right. And you can bring whatever you want to bring and it's, you know, you can take what you want to take out of it.
Yeah. Perfectly said.
Thank you. So in terms of coming back to New York, so how often do you get back home to see family?
Not too often. Just like having, you know, 2 jobs and all the nonsense. So holidays, and then like my sister has 2 little kiddos. So I try to go back. Luckily, they actually were both born around holidays. Amazing. So like I was just back for the 4th of July and it was my nephew's first birthday. So I was like, check. Which I mean, horrible. I would love to go back more. But it's hard. I like my mom tries to come visit me every once in a while. Like my aunt's been here, my sister's been like, everyone tries, like there's no feint of like someone just being like, I'm never going to go to New York. Like everyone, I feel like we do our best, but
there's logistics. And I think if you can mix it up so that someone like every 2 months you have like visitors or you're going back, do you get homesick?
So in the beginning, when I like first moved to New York, I felt like because of like what you just said of like having someone or going to visit and like the reality, I moved in August. So the reality of me, I think my mom came and visited in like September and then I went home for like a football game at the end of or the beginning of October. Someone came and visited me in October and then it was like Thanksgiving. So like I didn't have any, I was like, oh, cool, I'm fine. Yeah. But I had FOMO of all of my friends were in the Midwest.
Yes.
And I remember I like missed a birthday party and I was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I'm sitting here on a Friday night watching Grey's Anatomy. Yes. And you guys are all at this birthday party with all of my friends. So that was like, you know, you gotta get over it. I'm like, I definitely had a lot of talks to myself. I'm like, you made the choice.
Yes.
To move.
Yeah.
You made the choice and it sucks and it hurts and, you know, we're going to be okay. And like it all ended up working out. But I definitely think now I get just like still a little bit of FOMO, but also it's like a little homesick in terms of like, especially with my sister having 2 kids, it's like, there was like one specific instance, my niece had a dance recital and my whole family was there. And like, and then her husband's whole family was there. And I just was like, like it's
those moments.
It's hard because you're like, I could have, you know, maybe I could have moved things around and like could have done this. And then like also that weekend, I remember something like really great happened. I think like there was like something that here and I was like, I would have missed out on that. Like you are constantly playing a game.
Yeah, it is.
Of like, it's like the fear missing out there, fear missing out here. So it's like, you know, at the end of the day, I think FaceTime is incredible. Yes. Like you can pick up a phone and you can see somebody. Yes. Like that's so awesome. And then I just have like my parents and like my family, like they're so supportive and wonderful. And like, I know I'm so like blessed to have that, but like they all like also know how I am and who I am. And they're like, she's driven, like she's got places to go. And like, they're like, we're so happy when you can make it home. And like, I don't ever feel pressure, which is like, I feel like so nice. Some people I feel like move away and like their family's always like, oh, you're never home or you're never at this. Like they've never ever made a comment. Like they're just like, we appreciate when you can be here and like all the things.
And it's not forever. No. It might be for forever, but for some people it's like appreciating that this is the life chapter you're in at the moment. And I was talking to Dan, my husband, about it in terms of how I think like when you think of it as a temporary situation, that temporary mindset can actually hurt your relationship with New York because you're like, well, what's the point in trying to get grounded and rooted here? Because I'm just going to eventually leave. So and I had that in the back of my mind for a little while because people would always ask me like, when are you guys going to come back to Australia? And for us, it's like, yeah, that's the end goal. Like we would love to raise kids in Australia and eventually move out there. And whilst I was saying that, I think that was feeding into this like temporary mindset.
Right.
So it's like, at least if you just allow yourself to be here, allow yourself that life chapter.
Right.
And it can be as long as you want it to be. And I think also I was chatting to another friend who's a transplant here, and she was talking about how like she'll go back home and go for events. And she started to notice after a few events that, oh, this is the most recent time that a lot of these friends are seeing each other. Because I think in your mind, you picture everyone's happy and connected and you're the only one missing out. And in actuality, it's like, no. We haven't seen Alice since the last time you were in town.
Right.
But it's so easy. Your mind plays tricks on you. And especially when you're in the depths of a homesick, phase. And I think it's kind of having those pep talks with yourself, like you just said, of like, okay, you chose this. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to, feel a sense of grief that you're missing out on or you're losing out on something, but also it's temporary, but like let yourself be here.
Right.
And there's, pros and cons to both sides of it.
100%. Yeah.
How do you cope with before I ask you how you cope, what does homesickness look and sound like for you? Like, what are the things that you kind of notice or kind of have to pick up on in order to be like, I'm feeling a bit blah about being in New York?
I am a people person. Yeah. First and foremost, I love being around people and I get energy from people. Mm-hmm. And I think the second that I find myself in my apartment, and maybe make a choice of I don't have to go out tonight, or I don't have to, and just kind of this you just start to go in to a little hole, and then you're scrolling on Instagram, and you're seeing again it's this fear of missing out, and oh, this person's doing this thing, and it's just this ideal that you're making up in your head. Yeah. Completely. It's all made up. It's all made up what's going on in there. Yeah. And it's just, I think for me, I have now sitting here today, I have incredible friends in the city that have literally dragged me. Nope, we're going. Yes. Nope, we're doing this thing. Have made me stay in the moment of we're in New York City and let's love it today. Yeah. So it's definitely, but it's ebbs and flows.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can go weeks, months without even it hitting you.
Oh, yeah.
And then it is a birthday party or a birth or a wedding or, an engagement, those kind of events that just catch you off guard and you think, oh God, it's a punch to the stomach. But 6 months go by and you don't even you see that you're becoming more familiar. And I've heard people say they arrive in JFK and they feel more at home here sometimes than when they arrive in their native country. So yeah, that's always fascinating to me to start to see those scales start to balance out.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel this is home now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Love to hear it. What would you say has been the hardest thing about being a New York transplant?
I think the hardest thing, and God, so cliche, but the hardest thing is it takes time.
Yes.
And I wish the 22-year-old girl that moved here and had a moment, I don't know how many times I packed my bags to be nope, moving home. Within the first 6 months, I legitimately was nope, I'm done. I'm out of here. I can't, I'm a people person. So it was so hard. I was this is so hard. And everyone, I feel kind of sad. They were when I first moved, people were we don't really know if it's for you. I don't know. And that was always in the back of my head. Then I was oh God, am I disappointing people? At the end of the day, it's about you and your journey.
Yes.
And the fact that knowing wherever you're coming from, that it's not going to click.
No. not even in the best circumstances.
No.
Like life happens when you're a transplant. Like
Yeah.
the general life things that happen to you, you know, as a transplant. Like you could have the most perfect, optimal situation, and even then it would still be difficult.
Right. So I think just knowing like literally anything, like even like the freaking like subways. Like I remember being so frustrated with myself the first time I got on the subway and went the wrong way. Yeah. And then like, I'm like, oh no, it takes time. And like that I think is the hardest thing because you have to be patient. And let me tell you, I'm not patient.
Me either.
No.
I'm patient with other people.
Oh,
as you are.
Absolutely.
Myself,
yeah,
never.
Never.
You should have known first time.
Yeah. How dare you?
How dare you make a mistake? What would you say the best thing about being a transplant is?
Similarly to, I think, like what we were talking about of just like you can kind of just be who you want to be. Like, and I'm not saying that you have to move to a new city and recreate yourself, but like I got to be a version of myself that I loved. And like that I got to share with others what I wanted to share. And like they didn't know anything else about me. Yep. And I think that is the greatest part about wherever you go, whether it's in New York, you move somewhere else, like you get to make up your story, how you want it to be done. And like there's pros and cons to that of like, you know, sometimes it's also hard when you really want someone to like understand something and they don't. And you're like, oh, I got to tell them the whole story. And like, and you know, and I think there's so much beautifulness in that of like someone sharing their story and getting to know somebody because of the story they're telling. But I think it's also just so opening and like you get to, you know, you get to walk and like you're in New York City, you're walking the streets with millions of people who you're like, I have no idea what their story is. Where are they going to work today? What do they do? Like, and that to me is like so important to just like, you get to walk into a space, into a city and you're like, I'm just going to be who I am today.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a really forgiving city.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Because I remember my sister-in-law talking about how she found herself singing out loud. She had like her headphones on.
Yeah.
And she caught herself and was like, oh my gosh, like I was just singing out loud. No one looks twice at you.
No. Oh my God, no.
No.
People probably would have sang with her.
Exactly. Like there are so many, I think that you are truly allowed to be who you want to be.
Agreed.
And that to me is my favorite part is just the diversity of this city on every kind of demographic, ethnicity, sexuality, you know, like you can literally have so many intersecting factors, culture, like, and I'm not doing a very good job of listing all the intersections, but ultimately it's just no one person looks the same or has the same one story.
No.
And that to me is always when I come back, like I breathe like like it doesn't all look the same. And that's what's most beautiful about the city. Yeah. And that means like if you're worried about what you look like that day or how you're showing up, like it is, I would say, one of the most forgiving.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I'm gonna steal that for sure.
Do it. So speaking of that, because I feel like that goes in nicely to a myth around like people thinking New Yorkers are these rude, gruff human beings, which I think if you live for long enough, you get to see the full spectrum of New Yorkers.
Yeah.
What is one myth that you wish you could debunk for other people? Like if there is someone thinking about moving to the city, what's one thing you would love for them to know that is wrongly told about New York?
We talked about like the meanness. Like I'd be like, New Yorkers aren't mean, just don't be stupid. Like, like that's literally honestly, that's like my advice to people. I'm like, just literally don't be stupid. Don't look down at your phone. I would also say like people kind of talk about like the boroughs and like, you know, they're so far and like, you know, there are some that are far and I admit, but like I lived in Brooklyn when I first moved here and like, that was a wonderful experience. I loved it. And like, I definitely think it's starting to now, like a lot of people I think have like moved to Williamsburg and like some people in Bushwick. Like I feel like that we've like debunked that within ourselves in New York of like, you know, you can branch out and still like, you can
experience New York
and you can still get to like Chelsea in 30 minutes and it's not, it's okay. But yeah, I definitely think like the biggest one that I know like people are like nervous and scared of is just like, everyone's so mean.
Come on.
And I'm like, okay, so people are mean in Chicago.
Yeah. They might not be mean to your face, but they might be mean behind your back.
Like people are mean in Nashville. They're just as mean in other cities. So like, to me, I'm like, stop calling New Yorkers mean. Stop it.
5 years old. Let's talk a little bit more about Cycle Bar.
Yeah.
Because that to me really signifies community. We've already spoken about kind of like your instructor experience, but what drew you to spin more specifically? What did you love about that particular form of movement?
So as I mentioned, I was a college athlete and I was hurt like basically all 4 years.
Yeah.
And I also, it's a taxing thing on your mind. I was really going through it. I was like battling some depression, anxiety. I was also battling some like disordered eating behaviors and going into my junior year of college, they opened up a cycle bar in Madison, Wisconsin. And one of my girlfriends was like, hey, we should go. They're doing this like fun grand opening thing. And I was like, I don't want to go. Like we're lucky I got out of bed today. Like, I don't want to go to this thing. And she's like, no, let's just go. It's like, it was a free class. She was like, it'll be fun. We'll go get dinner after. And songs like 1 through 9, I was like, I hate this. Like my butt hurts. I like can't do what they're asking me to do. I'm like, I feel out of shape. I'm like, this is insane. I'm like, I literally hate it. And song 10, which like, if you're familiar with any kind of spin class, it's like usually the moment where like, you either give a little space or you kind of, if you have something that's on your heart that day, you kind of express it. And Emily, like I literally had a moment that I was like, did someone like tell her that I needed to hear what she's saying today? Like I sat on the bike and I literally cried. My first ever cycle bar class. I'm like almost sobbing because I'm like, I can't even believe the words that she's saying is so much of what I needed to hear today. Yeah. So we end class. I walk out and I know she like noticed me. And she comes up to me and she's like, hey, how's class? And I was like, it was fine. I was like, it was so fine. She was like, are you going to come back? And I was like, I don't think so. And she was like, I really think you should come back. I still remember her name's Katie McNally. Like she forever to this day has changed my life. And like, I will go to the grave. That cycle bar has saved my life multiple occasions, but I decide I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back. Yeah. And I go back, I take another class, different instructor. And what I realized when I left was, I'm like, that was 45 minutes where all of those voices in my head were quiet. Yeah. And I like, it blew my mind. Yeah. I was like, whoa. This is crazy. I got to go again. Yeah. So like, it just became, I was like, no, I need to keep going. And I kept going and I kept going. And it like, for what it's worth. And a lot of people do cycling or spin or whatever that they want to do for like mental health. And as did I, but I also lost over 50 pounds from doing it. And like, I created a better relationship with myself and my body and my mind and like was more comfortable. Like, it's so crazy to say and think of like, I was comfortable like walking around in a sports bra. Like I wasn't for a long time. And like, but like, that's kind of how people walk in there. And then you're like, oh, there's so many bodies in here. There's so many different kinds of people in here. Yeah. I feel like the environment that particular studio was also in was just so welcoming and incredible. So I had like foot problems, which is funny because I'm still having, but I was
like, you haven't got your brace on today.
I know. Thank God.
Angie sprained your ankle. Yeah, sprung.
I sprained my ankle. I fell. That's it, guys. Like that's literally, I just
up a gutter, down a gutter. Like what it was you just down. Walking? Oh.
Yeah. I was like on a stair and I fell. But I liked running like in college and it was something I enjoyed. But when I hurt my foot, I got foot surgery. They were like ixnay on the run-a. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. But they were like, honestly, spin's great. There's like, there's no impact. And I'm like, okay. So it was even better that I was like, okay, now I have this thing that like I'm also being told to do. Yes. And I like fell in love with the community. I fell in love with the instructors. Like at one point in time, as I mentioned, someone was like, hey, like, have you ever thought about doing this? And I was like, really? And then I auditioned.
What a confidence boost.
Oh my gosh. I was like, oh my God, really?
Like you've seen, and I've seen you, like there's definitely the power and motivation, like when an instructor calls you out and is like, I see your effort. Or like if you're not having a day where you're just like, no, like, no.
Yeah.
And then you like to have someone's like in their roundabout way say, I see you.
Yeah.
Like that gives you an extra 5 to 10% that you didn't have in the tank.
Yeah.
Do you think about, because you said like song 10 is usually a moment for people to reflect, take what you want from that space, but you also incorporate very like positive motivational pieces throughout your rides. Do you think about what you're going to say on any given ride? Like, or is it just come naturally or organically based off of how you're feeling that day?
In the beginning, I definitely had moments of like, I've never been a scripter. Like I definitely am very comfortable in front of a room. Like I'm very comfortable speaking. So I've never had, but like there were times where I definitely like would come in with like an idea and I found that I'm like, it just doesn't feel authentic to me. I'm like, I want to feel how I'm feeling. And like, I got like that advice from somebody when I was like going through training of just like, you know, like if it's like on the mic, it's also so intimidating if you're like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
It's like literally just what happened this morning? What happened this morning? Like that's like in my head, I'm like, okay, if I don't know, I'm like, okay, what did I do today? Like how could I literally relate it to like something happening right here, right now, what's going on?
Yeah.
But I like music is so important to me that I definitely like use cues from songs or whatever it is that sometimes even if I'm writing and I have no idea what I'm going to say, I'll like hear something in a song and I'm like, oh, that's perfect.
Done.
Yeah.
I've never seen you stumble, never seen you like have to like ponder or just
I'm pondering up there the whole time. There's a million things going on in my brain. I'm like, what's for dinner tonight? What's that person doing back there?
Always. Yeah. And that's like part of it because you mentioned like the beauty of spin is to be able to close your mind. Like it often for me, it just lets me to turn off everything else and just focus. But you know, like you need it most when my brain hasn't even been listening to you. And I'm just like, I'm three countries away.
Yep.
My brain is like just so consumed by something else. And it's those, bring it back to the moment, bring it back to the moment. And that is such a powerful, like grounding mindfulness element of your instruction style is to be like, I know, like I recognize your mind might not be with us right now, but come back to me.
Yeah.
Like come back.
Yeah.
And just those gentle reminders that we need. So one last thing I want to talk to you about in terms of Cycle Bar was a few weeks ago now, NoHo celebrated their 3rd birthday.
Yeah.
And I was at one of the celebration classes. I swear I don't just come for the big ones, like, because you give Celsius shots. Like you always make it fun. The celebration classes, the non-celebration classes. And you made a comment about you didn't expect the rate of growth for that particular studio in such a short period of time. What would you say have been the key ingredients to making that particular studio such a community-oriented space?
The people.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily being on the like talent team, I'm able to go through the process of it all. And like it's so cool being a part of this Cycle Bar New York City brand because it's like a startup essentially. It's like you're creating processes, you're creating things, and like we started out and like I became a lead like probably like 8 months after they opened, and so we were still when I first became a lead here. It was like, how do we audition people? How do we get to know people? Like it's kind of hard because the performative aspect of it all is like who is being performative and who is being a person. And so we definitely, like anything, like you hire somebody and you're like, like maybe that wasn't it or whatever. Yeah. But I think we truly pride ourselves on like the people that come through that door. And like also we pride ourselves in like, there's a lot of instructors out there at Cycle Bar right now that have never taught before. And like we trained them.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, that is like, we were like, let's teach them the way. Like, let's teach them the way that we like want this to feel and to be. And like, to me, like that is like what just like makes my heart sing is like that. Like there are so many people on our roster that had never taught before they like got here. And I think that's so special and incredible because like we're able to bring them, up with us.
And arguably from a business perspective, a very smart decision, because it means that there are perhaps behaviors that you're not having to change, or that behaviors that aren't so severely ingrained in them.
Right.
I'm just thinking about like diet culture and this idea that you need to punish your body and you're here to be able to treat yourself in the future, like just very toxic mentality. And so that's very smart because they're coming, afresh and not having learned any bad behaviors that can then be transferred onto the riders themselves.
Yeah.
That's really special.
It is. It is. Yeah. It's incredible. Like it's still like it's the best part about this job is like getting to work with incredible people. And then also just like getting to watch somebody walk through my doors one day as a rider. And then a year, 6 months later, whatever, they walk through the doors as an instructor. And I'm like,
so anyone who's listening, who wants to ride and instruct, this is your girl.
Here she is. Come see me.
It is only fitting for me to ask, because this podcast is all about community and how we foster it and how we feel more grounded and rooted here. What does community mean to you?
I have like a little quote that I have about community, but I think, my community is Cycle Bar. And what's so crazy to me is that I feel like I didn't necessarily find it until like not that long ago. And the example is, I'm going to put myself on blast for a second, but this past winter I got broken up with. And I was like my first adult relationship, like I saw myself with him, like I loved him. Like it was, I was like, okay, cool. Nice.
This is it.
We did it. And I got pretty blindsided by the breakup. And that happened on a Sunday night. And on
not the day to do it.
Not the day to do it.
Friday, please. Or Thursday.
Come on. So I teach Monday nights, 6:30 at NoHo.
Yes.
Arguably one of the best like slots you can have.
The best.
It is. I'm literally every single day, I'm like, this is a privilege to teach this class. And let me tell you, Emily, it's like not hard to get a sub. It's not hard. It is not hard. And in those circumstances, how many people would have subbed that class for me? 1 million. So my stubborn self, I call into work. I like didn't go to work because I couldn't stop crying. No. Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, let me just like go teach a class. The right decision. Yeah. Let me go teach a class though in front of people. Good choice.
Which speaks to it speaks to the space. It speaks to the space that you've created to be like, hey, if I cry, it's gonna be fine.
So I get there and I'm like, okay, like, come on.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends is taking class and this is like right around Thanksgiving. So she's like, hi, how are you? How was your Thanksgiving? How is my ex? And I just look at her and I go, he dumped me last night. And I start crying. And I'm at like the stadium door. And I'm like, hi, welcome to Cycle Bar. And I'm sitting at the stadium door and I'm crying. I'm like, oh, what am I doing here? And she's like, I'm so sorry. Like, and I'm like, how would you have known? How would you have known?
Yeah.
So I go into the back room and I like have just like a moment and I'm like, okay. And once again, I think we've talked about that. I'm like, you made a choice.
Yeah.
You made a choice. You're here. I'm saying you're not going to be yourself. So I walk into the stadium, I get on the mic and I said, hi, I do my damnness to be here and like give every single thing that I can to make this space what it is. And I love all of you, but I got dumped last night. And
I wasn't there. I'm there at every Monday.
You would have thought that like you could like hear a pin. Like I literally think people wanted to be like, what'd she just say? Like, what did she just say?
Because sometimes the mic can hiccup. So then you're like, hang on, what?
Yeah. And I go and I said, so I need you guys a whole lot more than you need me. I teach the class. I don't remember a single thing. I kind of scurry out of there because I'm like, oh my God, that's, slightly humiliating in front of 65 people that you tell them you're getting dumped, that you got dumped. And that night I went back to my exes to get all of my things. And so like basically relived the breakup.
Yes, always.
So horrible. I get
Probably
home.
worse than the breakup. It's
absolutely worse. Absolutely worse. I get home. I'm like distraught. I'm like, I'm so confused. I'm like, feel like I'm losing a person. I'm like, I feel like I'm like
grieving.
You are.
And I open up Instagram and I have like a weird amount of DMs. And I'm like, oh, did I post something on my hands? I'm like, what?
Angie,
what did I do? And I open up my DMs and it is an influx of people being like, hey, Ange, thank you so much for class. I appreciate that you came tonight. Hey, Ange, last week I got broken up with, so thank you for creating a space for me. Yeah. Hey, Ange, I went through a horrible breakup 6 months ago. It was really like comforting to hear. Yeah. Hey, Ange, you're going to get through it. Hey, like the amount of DMs was overwhelming. And I'm having this like epiphany in my head that I'm like, oh my God, I'm so unbelievably sad and like not sure what to do with that part. And at the same time, I'm like, all community is connection.
Yes, 100%.
And in order to create a connection, you have to be vulnerable. You have to let some walls down. And from that moment on, that was like probably 6 months ago, it like opened up the floodgates for me of like being able to say things on the mic that like maybe some people don't say. Like I remember I was like a couple of months ago, I'm like dating this guy and I know he's seeing me and another girl. Yeah. And I get on the mic and I'm like, you guys, this guy's seeing another girl. Should I dump him or should I play The Bachelor? And the class was like, dump him. Like I never would have said that a year ago. And like after that class, so people came up to me and they were like, oh my God, that was so funny. Or like, oh my God, like tell us how it goes. Like I'm a consumer of group fitness. I love it. Like I can go to any group fitness class and I promise you I will have a good time. And you can go in and you could say your name.
Yes.
You say, Angie Morrow, they're going to say, bike 17, you put your stuff away, you get on your bike, you take the class and you can leave. And that can be an experience. And that could be a great experience for some people. What I want people to experience is that they come into my studio, someone says, hi, how are you? What bike are you on? Yes. I'm on bike 17. Is this your first time here? Yeah, it actually is. Awesome. Here's the lockers. Here's Angie. Yes. She's going to help you set up your bike. You're going to have a conversation while I'm setting up your bike. Where are you from? Do you spin a lot? Have you ever done this? Like, I don't want people to come into my space unless they need it that day, you know? So like some people do come in, they're like, don't talk to me. But like, I want people to come in and I want them to feel connected. Yeah. Like community is connection. And if I can cultivate an ounce of connection, even like I've been trying, I don't know, in my classes, I'm like, look at your neighbor and like say like, hey, good job. Or like whatever it is, it's so incredible what that can create in a city where we are surrounded by people. Yeah. But we're not necessarily connecting to them.
No, blinders are on. And it's so easy, like you said, for that one class where you just need your blinders to be on to become 5 classes, 10 classes. And like, you're not looking up. You're not looking people in the eye. You're just kind of coming in. And I think you used the word the other day, like try not to make it transactional. Yep. Like allow yourself 1 or 2 of those, but like make those 1% efforts with each other. And I think in terms of your style, there's always an authentic imperfection to it, because humans, like, what is this idea that you get onto the bike, you tell the riders what to do, it's a fun boppy song and the 45 minutes are done. Like it's just people want to see that themselves in you. And I think, that is what's so crucial, is that it's like, oh, Angie is this amazing role model, but she's actually just like us. Like
you literally, like that just makes me so excited and happy, because like I think I've also been someone that's really looked up to an instructor and like almost idolized them. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm a 27 single girl in New York. Like the amount of people that can come to my class and relate to me fully, like a lot of that, like my demographic is that. And then like also, the people that don't, like maybe they get a kick out of my story, or like maybe I play a song, like I love like oldies and like
your dad,
maybe I play a rock song and they're like, that's so cool. Like there are so many ways to connect with people. And I like think that's why I like literally love this job. It's the best thing in the world. But like that makes me so happy that you said that, because I don't want to be like
unattainable.
And I'm like, I want to be your friend. Like,
hello.
Right? I'm 27 too. Like I'm a girl also going through it too. Like, and like, that's where I definitely, like we talk about, like we say, like, I'm up on the podium. I have the mic, but I'm like, this is not me against you. Yeah. This is us. Yeah. Where I'm not better than you. We all, my best friend, I got a quote around this. She always says this. She's like, we all put our shoes on the same way.
Ugh. I love that. Yeah.
So like at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm like, sure, I got the mic and I'm psychotic sometimes. And like, people are like, she's crazy, but like, I am a person too. And I also like, I think what's so cool about what Cycle Bar New York City, and like, we try so hard to like, not ever like, we always tell people like, never say never, but like, we definitely pride ourselves on the fact that like a lot of us work multiple jobs.
Yes.
So like I can relate to someone coming in and being like, oh my God, today was such a long day. I'm like, oh my God, me too.
I got you.
Like I'm with you. I'm in it with you. And like that to me is the, the athlete in me, the team mentality of like, that's why I love it so much. But so I think community is connection. And
I love that.
You gotta let down a wall to connect. And there are some days where it's not easy, and there are some days I don't do it well, and there's some days I do it really well. Like, and some days where you're more open to connecting. And like, that's also the magical thing about being an instructor is like, after that moment of like admitting to a class, like got dumped, like I've now felt more comfortable. I don't ever want to like air and be like, I had a horrible day, but like I felt more comfortable, like just like looking at a class and being like, sheesh, like I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah.
And like, honestly,
and I mean it.
That's it. Like, I'm so happy to be here. And today was rough, or this week was rough, or I'm having some homesickness. Like, it's cool to feel like I can be in that space, and I've never gotten like backlash or like, which I don't, but like I've never felt weird or uncomfortable about saying those things. Like the amount of people that are like, oh, me too, or like, thank you for saying that. Like, is crazy. It's crazy to me, the DMs I get after classes that someone's like, I needed to hear that exactly what you said today. Yeah. And I'm like, ugh. Like that's why I do this job.
Yeah.
Because I was that girl.
Yes. And I think one thing I love that you talk about is just like not taking yourself too seriously. Yeah. It's like you're on a bike. You're on a stationary bike.
You're literally not going anywhere.
Bopping to some songs. Like, it's genuine. And I think for me, I definitely have a history of taking myself too seriously.
Same.
Like perfectionist, wanting to present myself in a way that is, always put together and got it together, and like definitely doing this with that sense of vulnerability of like, I should have it together now because I've been here for 2.5 years, and why am I feeling this way? And it's like, it's that trepidation of, I don't think I should be talking about this. But then once I started talking about it, the exact same thing happened. The amount of people that were like, no, I feel that exact same way. Thank you for articulating it, because I thought I was the loser.
Right.
And you're like, what, you realize we're all losers.
We are all losers. We are all losers. Literally,
we're all weird.
Yes.
We're all losers. And there's a beauty in that.
Yes.
But like, as someone who has always tried to be put together and like, expecting a very high standard of yourself, to let your inner freak out and just to be like, yeah, sometimes you're alone, and that's okay, because a lot of us, that's human. Like that's a human experience.
Yep.
It's really funny how, community is connection, and it's allowing a space for your authentic self. Like just be whoever you need to be to show up today.
Right.
Like, oof. My last question around community is, what helped you feel more rooted in New York, if we haven't already covered it? And is there anything that you wish you'd done sooner or stopped doing sooner?
I mean, Cycle Bar definitely was like, why I'm rooted in New York. Like all my best friends are instructors. Yeah. Like, that's how I'm rooted here. So I feel like something that I just wish I would have stopped being so hard on myself. Mm-hmm. Like I really do. And that, like, maybe some could say that wouldn't change much if I was less hard on myself. But like, I think just the idea of like that FOMO that we were talking about, and like that constant, like, if I was there, like, I also was so hard on myself in terms of, I knew a lot of people like at work and at Cycle Bar that like either went to college around here or like had an entire community when they moved here. Yes. And like a little bit of jealousy. Yeah. Like envy. I'm like, my God, I wish I had that. Like, I wish like, so like, I definitely, I think just like this idea, I mean, the famous quote comparison is the thief of joy. Yes. Like I wish I just like would have told myself that a little bit more, because I was constantly comparing myself to like others, and even people who had like just moved. I'm like, oh my God, they just moved and they already have a friend group.
Yeah.
Like, also don't get me started on friend groups, right? But like, I'm like, they already like what? They already have plans, already doing that. And like, we are all in our own story, whether you're in a new book, you're in a new chapter, whatever it is. Like, I think I wish I would have stopped worrying so much about that, about the friend group, about the things to do, the plans, like.
Yeah. And think of like what you could have done with that energy.
Oh my God, right.
Like what else could have you done, or the peace you could have achieved? But you've also got to go through it, right? Like you've got to, everyone has that adjustment period, and it is very much a learning curve.
Yeah.
And then you're able to then, once you're aware of that behavior, you're able to spot it.
Yeah.
It's like, like to compare is to despair.
Yep.
And it's like, got it.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. That was my PhD supervisor, because I was she was like, your own lane. You're only the one who can get you through this this race. And she said, to compare is to despair. And I was like, that's what I do now.
I love that.
Yeah. We've got some sound bites.
Yeah. We got some good stuff happening here.
It. What would be your number one tip when it comes for a potential transplant, a new transplant, a veteran transplant? What would be your number one tip for creating community here?
Whatever it is that you love, try to find people to do it with.
Yes.
So the beautiful thing about the city is like there's like probably a million Facebook groups, or like even like Instagram, or like now people are using some other app. I have no idea. Like there's also apps. Like there's like just like 1,000 things. Like I don't know, if you like to read, the odds are you can find a book club.
Well, did you know that it's called Reading Rhythms? Oh, Reading Rhythms? Yes, I think I've said that correctly. And it's a place that you can go to, and it's like a reading party. You read by yourself like an hour, have a wine, have a coffee, and then for the next hour you speak like to other people about what you're reading. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the introverted downtime.
Yeah.
You can kind of look around and see who else is there. And then you have an hour of mingling and talking about what you're reading.
Okay, so perfect example of like, there's so much to do in this city. Yeah. Like it can get like a little overwhelming. Yeah. But like, I think if you like to do something like running, there's a million run clubs. There's one every hour of every day, I swear.
Yes.
So like you like to run, you run club. You like to spin, find a spin studio. Yeah. You like to read, there's a book club. Like if whatever it is that you like to do, and if like try to find, I think, something outside of your job like that. So you're not like rooted in, I think, sometimes if you can get so rooted in just that, then it kind of gets like a little, you're like, what happens if that goes away? That's scary. Yeah. And so I think, if you have something else, find that passion and then like, go find people to do it with. And like, if you're like, I don't have anybody to do it with, there's clubs, there's things like you will find somebody to do it with, is like my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah. I really like that. Last question for you. Okay. What was your I'm not in Kansas anymore moment? It could be a surreal moment, a pinch me moment. It could be, this is freaking weird. This would only happen in New York.
I feel like it's weird. I feel like it's probably cycle bar related. And like, to be honest, teaching like my first ever sold out class, because that studio that I teach at is 65 bikes. Yeah. And it's the biggest, it's like one of the biggest ones. It's the biggest one at Cycle Bar. It's probably one of the biggest ones in like the fitness community. And group fitness was pioneered in New York. Like, Soul Cycle is like 19 years old. Like there is a foundation there. Like you got berries, you got solid core, you have SLT. Like we have so many options. Yes. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, 65 people chose.
Yeah, that's special.
To be with me today. Like they chose to be with me. Like that to me was just like you're doing something and like, it's like scary. And like, I mean, I like wanted to vomit the whole time. I was like 65 people here. This is so scary. But
and
like
now you do it every Monday night, Thursday nights, Friday mornings, Saturday mornings. Am I missing it?
that was pretty good.
See, that's what's I was like, am I sounding story? Because
literally obsessed.
when you find an instructor that you really like, and there was another one, and I'm trying to think of her name, and she moved to California to do acting or dancing. And that was the other thing about just New York is the transient nature. So everyone's moving on to their next beautiful goal.
It's like so sad.
And I was so upset. And I was just like, I really loved her. And then I found you. And then it was like, there's just people that your music aligns, like the style is what you like. And so then you have to kind of now look ahead, book your schedule. Cause it's like, well, if you don't, you'll be on the wait list. You don't know if you get it. So like people are even like having to factor you into their schedule. Yeah. This sounds very stalkerish. When you find what you like, you go for it.
I'm so dead. But I think like to me, that was so out of reach. And like it was when I first started training at the studio I trained at in New York eons ago, I was just like, you know, I'm surrounded by all these incredible people that are doing this full time. Like they're getting paid money to do this full time. So many people are. Even at Cycle Bar. And like, I'm like, this is so incredible. Like this is people's full-time job. And I'm just doing this as a passion project that basically full time. But I just like, it was like a surreal moment of like, you're doing it in New York. Like it's that to me, I was like, you're in New York City. You are selling out a class and like that is so special and so exciting. And like me knowing where like my brain goes, I can never stay in the moment. I'm like, it's only like I've only been here 2 years. I'm like, okay, let's go. Like
what's next?
What's next? Like, I'm like, it's just so exciting for the brand. It's so exciting for the modality. Like spin in general, I think at one point in time, everyone's like, it's dying. It's not. And like, no, it's exciting. Like people want to move their body.
Yes.
Like I actually just ordered a book. It's called The Joy of Movement. I'm very excited to read it.
Please let me know what it's like.
I will. So I'm like excited because like that to me, I think we're also just like New York starting to kind of kick back.
Yes.
You know, like I think we still lost a little in COVID and we're coming back.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one point that in terms of like social atrophy is what I've been really fascinated with, like how COVID kind of like our style of socializing was transformed to digital. And as transplants, a large portion of your kind of socializing can be digital, whether you're FaceTiming friends back home. Like for me, I work remote, so I am literally always conference calling. And so like you as an extrovert, I kind of lost some of that muscle and like you have to gain, it's like going to the gym. And so now I go just every social event you might not want to go to, and that they're the ones you need to go to the most because you're working up that muscle again and trying to, you know, get fit mentally, socially. And so I think a lot of everyone was impacted by COVID and now like, especially in a city that can be overstimulating.
Right.
It's like, okay, sometimes I close my blinds and say, good night, New York. Not tonight. And so like, I agree with you. Like a lot of places are kicking back now, but like it feels like we're almost back to normal, but we learned so much and I don't think we take it for granted anymore. Because you can see what you lose as a result of having to isolate and be disconnected physically. Angie Morrow, you are a joy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people find you online, in person, if they want to take a ride with you, if they want to become an instructor?
Cycle Bar NoHo is my main studio. I teach there, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So you can catch me any day of the week, basically. My Instagram is Angie Morrow _02. You can always DM me if you want to like chat or, you know, come to a class. But other than that, I'm around.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for keeping me rooted in New York. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yay.
Here's a fun fact about today's episode. It was actually the very first episode that I recorded with a guest. I was full of jitters leading up to the session, but all the self-doubt swiftly went away as soon as the conversation started. It was quickly evident that I was simply talking to a kindred spirit who equally cherishes human connection and community. There are random recommendations throughout the episode, from books to cooking classes. So if any of these sparked your interest, you can find these in the show notes. This episode was lovingly edited by Louise, who is ensuring that our episodes are smooth and engaging. And if you want to keep the conversation going in between episodes, you can follow us on Instagram for short form content and Substack for deeper dives. If you like or maybe even love this episode, you can subscribe to York Transplants on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and your reviews and feedback mean the world to me. And they help us grow our community one transplant at a time. Until next time, stay rooted.